All right.
Okay, just waiting for everybody to be admitted. Awesome. All right, welcome everybody to this month's Flight School Connector. So this topic for this month is code 7700, customer service emergency and how you recover. As always, I'm glad to have our normal team here with us. So we're glad to have Elizabeth Tennyson, our Senior Vice President of the AOPA Foundation You Can Fly division, which is the best one, in my opinion, at least. Of course, my name's Chris Moser. We've got Stephen Schroeder with us as always. This is where you actually get behind the scenes of Stephen. We don't get to see him on Don't Get Rusty every month. And in fact, Stephen today is going to be bringing in some nice perspective because Stephen, tell us a little bit about your background that people may not know.
Oh gosh, in the before times.
In the before times.
Before
the
times.
times that are in the hidden zone.
Gosh, if anybody remembers Ritz Camera from a lifetime ago, used to actually manage the retail stores for a couple different Ritz cameras around the area. So 10 to 12 years experience doing that. I also managed a bank branch for Chevy Chase Bank, has gone away. But yeah, managing teams and dealing with customer service issues throughout the retail holidays, things like that. So it's quite an experience.
No, I'm glad you're going to be able to share some of that with us today. And then, of course, our special guest this month is Charles Lehman, our Manager of Operations. Charles, tell us a little bit about what you do here at AOPA.
Sure. Well, pleasure to be with you, Chris. And so basically what I do is I manage, as my title appropriately says, the operations for the Pilot Information Center, the Member Services team, as well as the Flight Ops department within the AOPA. So these two areas, the Pilot Information Center and Member Services, are the two main endpoints for members to contact AOPA for any kind of issues, comments, questions, needs, whatever it is. We are a member support team, member support structure. So again, appropriately to the subject matter we're discussing today, it's essential to actually have a solid plan of dealing with situations as they occur. But previously to this, interestingly enough, similar to what Stephen actually had, I came from a retail environment. Basically started entry level, worked my way up to management, managed some major retail establishments, but then also had another career in the nonprofit sector where I managed 47 nonprofits. Basically, their direct mail strategies, revenue, all that kind of stuff within the organization I worked for. So maintaining your client base was essential, and again, subject matter appropriate there as well. So.
Awesome. So we're really, really glad to have both Stephen bringing some of his experience and, of course, Charles with a wealth of experience in this as we talk today about customer service recovery. But before we get into the details, we do have a couple of quick announcements, a couple of things. So we'll be hearing from Charles and some stuff from Stephen and the rest of us right after the break, because here we go with our commercial break. First off, we want to thank Sporty's Pilot Shop for sponsoring the program. And so if you are interested in starting up a pilot shop at your school or need supplies for your students, this is the thing to check out. So check out Sporty's Dealers Program. You can see that it's sportys.com/dealer, and you can see some of the details there on the slide. Also, one of the really common things that we hear are people always asking about getting flight funding for their students, for their customers. And so we just wanted to let you know that AOPA's 2022 flight training scholarships applications are now open. And so that the application deadline, they all need to be done by February 11th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight, so Eastern Time. And here are some of the categories. So if you know of some folks that would be looking for some flight training scholarship and who wouldn't want free money, here's the place to go do it. So we've got a high school flight training scholarship program. We've got for teachers, if you know a high school teacher that's involved in aviation. And then there are scholarships for people seeking primary flight training. You can see the details there on the screen. And for advanced ratings, that means past their private or whatever their primary would be. And the other part, if you want more information, check it out at aopa.org/scholarships. All right, let's get back to the program here. So today, this is what we're going to talk about today. We are going to do a quick review of something we talked about last month. I know last month we discussed customer service, basically input surveys, customer input that way. And we mentioned the fact that, there is a method to customer service recovery when things go, when something breaks or something doesn't work out. How do you recover from that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to do a quick review of that type of recovery and why bother with it. So you'll probably recognize that slide. We'll just do a very quick overview of that again. But Then today we are going to walk you step by step, and this is something that Charles and Stephen and I and Elizabeth, we all worked on, sort of taking experience from these guys' wealth of the background, and also we did some research and found a few articles, which we will share in a handout a little later. And so that will have the links for you, the articles that we found. So there's the list of stuff that we're going to talk about. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have time, we'll do a review and practice on one of them. But before we get started, just in the chat box, if you would, give us an answer to this question. How often do you encounter or have you encountered upset customers? Is it several times a week? Is it a few times a month? Maybe it's just a couple of times a quarter, or have you never really had to deal with anything bad? So we're just kind of curious. So if you would, in the chat, you'll find that in the Teams window here. There's like a little, I think it looks like a cartoon sort of dialogue.
Speech bubble thing. Yeah.
Speech bubble. Thank you. And just in there, maybe just put in your chat. Just give us an idea of what you have dealt with in the past when it comes to upset customers or customers that you felt were just not happy. And who knows what it might be? It could be something that went wrong with the service you're providing, or it could just be sometimes people are just grumpy, and that happens too. So maybe in the chat.
Chris, we also know that sometimes you may get several complaints a month, but it may be from the same one or two people, sort of serial offenders. So consider that as well.
Yes. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go ahead, and if you would take a moment to put that in the chat, and we'll go ahead and move on and do a little bit of that review that we were talking about. And we are kind of curious to know how often do you deal with customer service recovery or deal with customers that are not happy. So here we go. We got one person saying an occasional CFI mismatch, twice or less a year. So we'll take a look at those in a second. Let's do a quick review though, as we're letting those come in, and we'll talk about those momentarily, about why it's important to deal with upset customers. And like I said, this is something we talked about at the beginning of last month, but I just thought it was appropriate to just review this quickly again. The big part here, and I know Charles, this is one thing you mentioned too, is like we can see on the slide here is the basic idea. If you look there's some American Express did a study, Harvard Business Review. The big part here is that when people have a bad experience, they don't just keep it to themselves. And I know you had some sort of experience with that. You kind of mentioned some of that part of it. You want to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what the effect is of letting people sort of go out and spread the bad news, as it were?
Yeah. So one of the big things that, again, coming from the retail environment, more or less, especially small retail startup companies I've worked for, you are a small business in a community, and your community is your lifeblood, right? So you really need to make sure that the community viewpoint on your company, on your service that you provide, is stellar to the furthest extent possible. Now, it's always inevitable that you're going to get an upset person, but it's really about squashing that opportunity to have that spread like wildfire. And then again, to the American Express study here, really does accentuate the fact that bad word spreads massively times faster than good word. All right, so you really need to kind of, this is why the recovery aspect of customer service is so important, because if I'm an upset person, we've all been there, we've all had negative experiences with various services, retail, whatever it may be, and you're going to be more apt to tell 20, 30, 40 people, your friends, versus if you had a great experience, you're going to tell 5 to 6, maybe 10, so again, it's that concept of bad word spreads like wildfire, or good word just does not. And so that's where you really got to be able to, control that. And especially, you really just, the big thing, and we'll go into it here a little bit, but the big thing is just really hearing out the customer and actually making sure that they understand that you are there to support them and make it right. That's really the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. And in fact, I know that we discussed this. I know we were chatting yesterday and talked a little bit about the fact of that. Yeah, when you get that bad experience, you often use it as a point of conversation with people that have nothing to do with that topic. Yep. You just say, you want to hear something really bad that happened to me, versus on the good side of things, usually it would be something that somebody might mention, like, oh, I'm looking for this service. Oh, I've got a great place you should go. But I don't usually seek it out saying, I had a great customer service experience. But the opposite is true. I had an awful thing. I'm going to tell you about this. And so people that may not even be in it, they're going to end up hearing it and spreading it too.
Right.
Okay, so let's take a look. So this is just an idea, and we're going to come back to this at the end. But just we could sort of brainstorm some ideas of what it might be, things that might happen. And in fact, I know we asked in the chat and a couple of people responded there. We thought things like maybe people are unhappy with their CFI or scheduling errors and so on. And we had a few people there. One person, Jim, mentioned an occasional CFI mismatch can occur. And obviously that would be one where people would be upset because the CFI really is the flight school to that customer. And then Jamie mentioned that she doesn't get too many, but she also vets students very, very carefully. She's very selective on who she takes, which is obviously a good way to go, although it does limit your customer base. It makes that challenging, I'm sure. So that said, let's get into the practical parts of what we would do with situations like this, and maybe later you guys can share some of the things that have happened to you as well. But I'm hoping, or I'm thinking, that this probably covers an awful lot of what you might see. So let's take a look here. And the first part is we want to step one. We literally want to go step by step. And Charles, take us through this idea of anticipating and understanding customer needs as a part of this recovery process.
Yep. So really big, and it's often overlooked, unfortunately, but from a business aspect, one of the best things you can do is to do a recovery effort is to prevent it in the first place, right? So again, looking at the slide here, you have your internal discovery, right? So one of the best things you can do is even this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, whatever, get together with your team and really look over what situations occurred last week, last month, anything that you can remember. Again, these are situations. A situation is a negative thing, a situation you want to prevent. So look at it from the standpoint of how did this occur? What was the response, number one? And then secondly, what was the customers? I'm going to probably speak to, say members instead of customers because I'm so used to saying that. But yeah, so what was the response from the customer? And then what was the total end game? Like, did that individual at the end of the entire ordeal, did that individual actually leave happy or satisfied or unsatisfied? And log these down. It's very important to actually create a log of all these things. And that way you can actually column it out and say, all right, here's the situation, here's all these different things, and then create an action plan to eliminate that from happening in the future. Again, these are things that you don't want to have occur. And if you actually identify and work towards prevention, then you have a much higher probability of just eliminating it altogether. Inevitably, it will occur. You will have situations. And then that's when you actually really got to, to this last bullet point here, train the employees on how to appropriately respond to these varying situations, even though you're expecting them not to occur again based on implemented procedures, processes, what it may be. You still got to be prepared for it in case something just comes out of the blue. So again, it's just really just getting together with the team, doing a discovery, and doing that prep work to to eliminate any kind of negative effect if it does occur again.
So it's almost like what you're getting at is the idea of being proactive instead of reactive, which is what so often seems 100%. To happen, right? So it's about planning ahead and trying to be prepared so we eliminate it in the first place, but then having a system to do. And that's what we're going to try to provide for you today from some of the research we did was to give you step-by-step. So step one is plan ahead, try to prevent stuff, and then actually have a plan for what to do if you get somebody that's upset before you even begin.
And the time investment with that proactive effort is going to pay off in dividends without question. It is just the best thing you can do from a customer service standpoint.
Cool. All right. So step two, and notice again, step two, we're talking about empowering the team. We haven't even gotten into actually dealing with an irate customer yet. We're literally talking about what can we do to prepare so that when it happens, we're ready and we can do it smoothly and efficiently and handle it really well, effectively, I guess is the word I want. So I know this is something I know I learned from speaking with you, Charles, too, but we're talking about this. So you kind of mentioned this idea of empowering the team. I know you say that we actually work on that here in our membership department at AOPA. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically, and I'll go into it just really quickly, how we in member services actually handle escalations, because it all starts with empowering the team. So if you show the team, the individuals on the ground dealing with the public, give them the ability to actually handle a situation and know kind of what that threshold is. That here's the tools that you have at your disposal. Just resolve it. Do everything in your power. You don't want that upset individual, that upset customer or member to have to be put kind of like in a hold pattern, if you want to call it that. And then while this thing's being worked on, throughout the rest of the day or whatever, you want to do your best to resolve it at that point in time, which is the best opportunity to do that. is with that individual that the members relaying that issue to initially. So we really do put a lot of trust and emphasis on our staff to say, they're raising the situation to you, resolve it. However, there are instances where that is not going to be possible. So we actually have a documentation process that actually will basically an escalation process, if you want to call it that. They'll take down a whole bunch of information within that. What two major things, and this is very key with any escalation, you want to capture obviously details of the problem, kind of goes on, without saying, but the most important thing is what is that member's expected outcome, right? So we actually look at, I'm sorry you're feeling this way. What can we do? What is your expected outcome from this situation? They are so eager to tell you what that is, and that's honestly a question in so many companies that is left out of the entire equation. So what we'll do is we'll actually gather that information. We have a whole process internally to actually escalate that. Either maybe it's a third-party company that the member is upset with, or maybe it's an internal department. We always, try to get a resolution within 2 business days, 48 hours. And we set that expectation with the member when they're on the phone with us. And then we always make regular callbacks and follow up with them. Again, very important to make sure that that person doesn't feel that they're being basically put in shoved in the corner and ignored, right? So you really got to make sure that they're understanding of where the situation resides at that point in time.
And Charles, maybe I know that you mentioned some other examples within that escalation process. Maybe it'd be cool for you to share those as we come to the appropriate steps in the presentation. Some of the things you mentioned. I know there was one that was like a warm handoff, or that they advocate for them. So I thought that was a really good key. And just to hit some of the highlights here on the empowering your team, notice too the theme here of the things that we found, which are obviously, as Charles already mentioned, showing the trust in the staff and giving them the power. But more importantly, it's really think about, what are you willing to entrust your employees with? What are the specific things that you would let them, authorize them ahead of time to do? Is it you would allow them to give an hour of sim time, or you would allow them some kind of discount, a coupon maybe, or whatever it might be? Give them tools that they can use ahead of time that might be effective. And one example I know when I was doing some of the research too is that our Ritz-Carlton company, obviously a really big high-end hospitality hotel type of firm, they encourage and they authorize their employees to spend up to $2,000 on guest needs or guest issues that come up. Obviously, that's a little above and beyond, but they're talking about kind of the scale that they're on. But really giving them that specific part of what they're allowed to do to handle a customer complaint before they even have to go to a manager, hopefully handling it right then and there. So so good points. By the way, all these slides, this is what's in the notes. We're going to give you all of these slides to use so you can have this for your reference.
Well, a big thing on that whole, what you were just talking about, Chris, is just a little bit of expenditure now, basically a loss on the company's part, a lot of times can pay off greatly because you're retaining that customer and they're going to spend more. They're going to retain your services throughout the months ahead. So it's better to make amends, understand, apologize, give a little in order to gain a lot. Basically, is the adage.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very powerful. All right, so let's take a look at now step 3. So we've talked about planning ahead. We've talked about empowering the team, which is of course part of that planning ahead of coming to that action plan, giving the team the ability to handle it right away so they're not waiting around, as Charles mentions, putting them in a holding pattern. Let's take a look now finally when we actually have something happens, customer service fails in some way. What do we actually do with the irate customer? And I know that I worked in our PIC department for a year here at AOPA, and I know Charles and Stephen have both done this as well. So what's this part about acknowledge and apologize?
So the whole apology aspect is very, very powerful, because again, that shows empathy, that shows the fact that you're understanding, that you're apologizing on behalf. I'll just use us as AOPA. You're apologizing on behalf of AOPA for the situation. You want to make it right, and just really letting that member understand that they are being heard, that they are understood. Right, that is extremely important, extremely powerful. And then, like it says here, make amends in some manner, whatever is suitable for the situation.
Right. So the idea of maybe again it's the coupon or small gift or waiving the bill, but is that the be all end all? Is that it? Okay, I waived the bill. Are we good now? That's not enough, right?
No, hardly ever. So let's say situationally, if a member contacts us and they're upset and The agent that actually handles the instance actually is able to make the amends, right? A lot of times what they'll do, depending on the situation, they will actually, number one, we have this internal program of kind of just giving special gifts outside of the norm, right? So instead of just like a headset bag or whatever the situation may be, that we're able to do to make amends, we'll actually put them into this new program and actually give them a little bit more as kind of an apology. But then secondly, we'll also follow up with them periodically and actually just make sure that they're good. We just want to make sure that they know AOP is there for them, and that we are that the situation has obviously been resolved. But again, we heard, we understand, and again, we do apologize.
And a key part here, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the part about making sure that they feel heard is really important, and we shouldn't gloss over that one, because I've found that a lot of times by the time someone comes to complain to you, they feel they have not been heard 2 or 3 times already. So they're frustrated and they're angry, not necessarily with you or what you have or haven't done, but because nobody's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Right. In fact, yeah, I know we're gonna hit that in step 4 even in more detail. But one of the things I wanted to mention too is that apology is to be careful. This is something you want to train your staff on, because it's like, I know for me, from my own experience, when I was working a job in college, I worked retail at a music store, and I can remember I worked the night shift. It was a small music store, and people would walk in wanting to check out whatever, and I was doing homework, and I can remember feeling like, oh, I have to deal with a customer now. I've learned since then not to do that, but so train your staff, especially if they're younger, maybe haven't had jobs like this before. Train them on how to offer that real apology to not just be like the example here, I'm sorry if you feel that way, or I feel bad about the fact that you're upset. Then they're like, I don't really care, but I feel bad that you're upset, and whatever it might be. So something along those lines. Please don't do that. So try to train them on how to handle that the right way. Okay, so step 4, to Elizabeth's point, is listen, empathize, and ask these open-ended questions to help deal with this. So Charles, I will ask you again, do you want to give us an idea here? And I know that Stephen has dealt with this a bunch too when it comes to people being very, very emotional. Tell us a little bit about what you do now that you've made the apology. What's the next step to sort of work this process?
So the biggest thing you can actually train your staff on, and I can't stress this enough, is put yourself in the customer's shoes, right? Because again, we've all been there, we've all experienced this ourselves. So being on the flip side of that, being the recipient, a lot of times is a little bit trying, and you tend to be reactive, right? So you really don't want to be that way. You want to really just understand that it is truly emotion that is driving this entire thing, and be it right or wrong, doesn't really matter. That individual is coming to you with a problem, and they're emotional about it. You've got to put yourself in their shoes and respond accordingly. Do not respond with emotion. Obviously, we want to be very cognizant of their feelings, but really just again apologize and just really know that they are looking to you for a solution, not to further the problem. And Stephen, I know, has some unique instances from Ritz Camera that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, lots of feels like war stories, and I'm still recovering from my retail days.
Do you have one that you might want to share just as an example of how you dealt with it?
Trying to think through some specifics, and thinking back to some of the previous stuff we've talked about, the not being defensive either.
Mm-hmm.
Don't immediately go on the defensive, because if it feels like they're attacking you in some way, like you have to kind of remove yourself from things a bit. Instead, you can empathize with what they're telling you, and to speak to what Elizabeth said, making sure the person feels heard and understood is important. And sometimes it's even using kind of the psychology thing of like being neutral and repeating back what the person's telling you. Like, okay, I'm here, you're saying this. Do I have that correct? And it gives them a chance to be like, yeah, you're like, okay, you're repeating back and they're hearing you say what they've just told you.
Right.
That can be very powerful, and just making sure that they see that you're actually comprehending versus like you're getting the Charlie Brown wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
Another thing, my biggest memories of retail stuff and having to deal with some unhappy people was always during the holiday season, it seemed. And a lot of times it's also being able to de-escalate a little bit. Like the person is upset and trying to get to the meat of why they're upset. Are they really keyed off about what's just happened, or is there something else driving it that's like a deeper issue? And then finding a way to try to help them, so they feel like making them feel like you are on their side with this.
Yeah, one thing too that just to kind of put a nail on that too is the fact that our mentality here at AOPA is if a member has a problem, AOPA has a problem.
Right.
And that is, and that can go for any company that is out there. You know, if again, if a customer is coming to you, they have a problem, now you have a problem, and you are tasked with solving that and resolving it to that customer's satisfaction. That is the goal as of that point. Nothing else really matters. It is take care of that customer right then and there as best as you can. Sometimes it may take a day or two, given the scenario, but either way, you've got to make that individual happy because again, you want to eliminate that wildfire spread of that negativity about the company or about the organization.
And go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry. And to what Stephen was saying about not being defensive, that goes also to your staff training. Emotion is contagious. And so if somebody comes in and they're angry and hostile and accusatory, it is very hard and takes real practice not to be hostile and angry and accusatory right back at them. So, that's an element of the staff training as well, to first empathize with their emotion, but not to adopt it.
Yeah,
good point.
very well said.
One of the things I was just I'm sort of as I'm standing back and watching from the bigger view here too. I almost feel like a key point here might be that they're coming in, they're very emotional, and I know from what you guys have said too is that letting them get that out will let them calm down, and then it's almost like you begin to play the last part here is you begin to play customer service detective. Okay, so can you explain to me like what's going on, like what happened so that I can understand, and you're not offering solutions at this point. You're not trying to be defensive about, well, that shouldn't have happened. You just try to find out, okay, what happened, explain to me, and see what's going on. And does that sound about accurate? So that your goal is to figure out what is upsetting you, and then we can figure out what to do about it. Sound about right? Okay, cool.
That's a good phrase.
Yep.
Customer service detective.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Point,
all right.
Right here.
So jot that one down. Yeah. Trademark. All right. So step 5. Step 5, the next one is now so we've gotten this whole part. We've been planning, we've been training, we've apologized right away. And I remember when I worked in PIC, that was a hard thing to do because that was like people would call, they were upset. And I was like, they were arguing with me or yelling at me about something that I didn't do, had no control over, but it was just that part of just listening. I'm just trying to help as able. And so then we started playing the detective to figure out what it is. Once we've figured out, we have an idea of what the issue is, what it is they're concerned about, they're upset about, we go to step 5. And it's fix the problem, but notice the key words that go along with this one: promptly and fairly. So Charles, I will turn it over again to you. Give us a little bit of an idea of how you guys do this idea of promptly and fairly to fix it.
So again, that setting that expectation primarily is very, very key. And so if it's something that the handling agent is going to know that's going to take more than a day to resolve, they actually they will set that expectation, and maybe they say we will contact you back tomorrow. So if it's not able to be solved right then and there, if it's not going to be able to be solved that next day, still that individual is expecting a callback or expecting a follow-up at that point in time, that callback is done regardless if there's a solution or not. You got to make sure that individual is understanding that we are still working towards a resolution. So you set that time expectation, very, very, very important. And again, it's that question of what is your expected outcome? Like what is it that you want us to what would make you satisfied, basically. So again, it goes to unreasonable and unreasonable requests. Sometimes there will be unreasonable requests. It's the nature of the game, but you just got to be able to massage it around and converse with them. Again, it goes to empowering your staff, but kind of massage the conversation around to actually get them to agree to a more reasonable outcome. Sometimes that is needed. But yeah, it's a very, to Elizabeth's point, it's a very unique talent that one must have in order to be on that side of the conversation. But yeah, it's when you have a solution in place, and you're actually letting them know, it's like we can't give you a new plane because we missed your appointment. That's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. We love you, but no, I'm sorry. But maybe there's an alternative of maybe free, lesson, 2 free lessons or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a new, piece of gear, whatever you might have that would that you feel at that particular situation would appease the member or the customer again, then that's really what you want to go for. But really, it's a skill to kind of tamp down those unreasonable expectations because they're heated. There is a higher probability that they will just kind of go off that ledge and say, I want this, 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 this. And it's just obviously that's not going to be the case. That's not the reality. So, and again, taking a little bit of a financial hit for the long-term gain is almost always the best way to go in many respects, because again, you want to retain that customer, you want to keep their business, keep their services, and most importantly, you want to prevent that negative view in the community about the business, because again, they will tell everybody that they know about a situation that was not satisfactorily handled. Now, one thing I will say from prior experience, there have been quite a number of situations where somebody I just felt was just going to go out and tell every person on the street, go out to Walmart and just scream at the cash registers over the PA and not even, not even care. They just wanted to tell everybody. But one of the most powerful things you can do from a business aspect is take that, is flipping that around, basically turning the frown upside down and making that situation where it's unsurmountable to the customer. And then shortly thereafter, they are now about as satisfied as can be. A lot of times they will have a much stronger view of, positive view of your company if you're able to do that. And again, letting them know that they have been heard, that the situation is understood. And also, if there's a change organizationally within your company that needed to occur to prevent this from happening, that change has occurred. And then they know that they were instrumental in actually making an organization change because of the situation that they were faced with.
Exactly. And to go back to some of this too, some of the highlights here, and I know Stephen, you had mentioned it, this phrase too, that I can't give you exactly. I know you've dealt with that a lot. I can't give you that, but
Right.
if you want to give us a little bit of insight into that, how do you use that in a real basis?
I guess it was a big lesson I learned early on to when someone is requesting something or needs something from you, and you're the face of the organization at that moment. To not end phrases and sentences on a negative note. Like they're asking for something that you don't think you can actually do. Like, okay, I can't make that happen for you, but what I can offer is. So you're still giving them something. There's this positive ending to that phrase. That way they're not hearing I can't or I won't as you're talking to them. And Jamie had a great comment here in the comments talking about how we're talking a lot more about unhappy people who are angry, but also like what happens when someone's emotional because they're dealing with sadness, crying, frustration. She's talking like some of her students who are upset with their own expectations or take their performances very personally. And I like actually what she's mentioned. She says she places tissue boxes around strategically over the flight school so people can like have their moment and you can help them work through what they're feeling at the time. I guess one of my big ones was like Bruce Cameron did a lot of film processing. We were a 1 hour photo place. And when we would get busy, if people had specific expectations and we couldn't deliver the product or prints on time, I dealt with this too. People being mad, but also people being really upset because they needed it for a gift or something like that. There's not always an easy fix for things, but again, being able to offer someone a little something extra or to help them feel better or help their day be better, it can go a long way. And turning the frown upside down. If someone's unhappy with something you've done or misunderstood something, and then you can actually help them make their day better, they'll be a big advocate for you afterwards. So like with Jamie's solution, like being able to be that kind of emotional support for someone, they'll go out and tell other people like, I had this really rough day with my flight training, but the owner, the instructor really helped me work through some things, and I can't wait to get back.
Yeah, and I'm not, well, maybe I'll be curious if Jamie will share some of that a little later as we get towards the end here with how that works, or if that's a strategy that works for her, if she's looking for other ideas too. But obviously, I've seen that in my own flight training, and when people are, usually it's more they get really hard on themselves, and sort of like that's where we're able to do the positive part of pumping them back up and say, well, look what you did here, and look at these positive things, because oftentimes students are way harder on themselves in that sort of situation, and they don't see the progress that they have made. That we see as instructors. So, okay, so we got the idea here that it's like is set the expectation, make sure you follow up. And for some reason, it's not going to work. And I had a story I shared with these guys yesterday, but it's like, just be honest with the customer. I had a situation where I'd gone to a furniture store, it was one of those unfinished ones, and they offered to finish it. And they told me, okay, that we're a little behind. It'll take us 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was. So then I called and I was waiting, like, why isn't it ready yet? And then I called back, and they never called me about this. I called back, and the guy was like, oh yeah, well, the guy that did that quit, so we just got somebody new, so now we're going to be another 2 weeks after that. I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? And so then I was waiting, and I called again after the 2-3 weeks or whatever, and then he just wouldn't answer my phone. And so then I tested it calling from a different phone, and he was actually monitoring my caller ID and not answering the phone when I was calling. I was really upset. So had he just been honest with me and said, like, this is how long it's going to take, I would have had a completely different reaction. But so just be proactive. And I know, Charles, you said yesterday you were dealing with something at a car dealership, and I remember the phrase you said basically was that the customer should not be reaching out to you.
Right.
Remember that? Yeah.
Yep. And so that whole thing of, and it was actually a hot tub place I worked for. It's we sold hot tubs, saunas, pools, all that fun stuff for the backyard. But yeah, it was the whole thing of our company aspect was, if a customer ever has to call us back, and even in the nonprofit industry, same thing. If one of my clients had to call for a follow-up to check on the status of something, that is the worst thing you could possibly do, right? Because again, now you're causing that customer or that client just to say, what the heck is going on here? Now they have to go take time out of their day, pick up the phone, call you, and they're basically, you can just imagine as they're pounding those keys on the phone because they're going to try to get a hold of Charles and say, why didn't you call me this morning to give me an update, or yesterday, or for 4 days? You don't want that to happen. So really that proactive nature, even if it's a daily voicemail, email, whatever it is, follow up, make sure that the situation is understood and where it sits within the resolution. It can go miles just for a very small time investment, save you a lot of headache and heartache and the customer.
Cool. All right. So now we've hopefully fixed the problem. We've come up with a solution, and we've hopefully walked through and given them something that they're willing to accept. Hopefully. The next step, and this is, I know that you had a story about this one, Charles, which is that idea, you've already kind of hinted at it, that idea of follow-up. And so what we're really getting at here is, it's the idea of, we've already done it, but it's even after you resolved it and supposedly, hopefully they're happy, you recommend doing another follow-up after that. Can you share that with us?
Yep. And so it was a not so fun situation. But again, that hot tub place, basically what occurred was, we sold one of my staff sold a hot tub, and it had all the bells and whistles, right? Hot tub came in, and my staff went out to do the install. And during that install, the customer says, wait, this is not the right one. They were ticked off, livid, because they've been waiting a month and a half for this thing. They were so excited. They paid over 15 grand for this thing. And so here I get the call from the customer screaming at my ear. So again, apologize, hear it out, just let them get it out. And so after the whole scenario kind of tamed down a little bit, ended up going through and ordering a brand new hot tub for them, let them keep that one, went and had my team keep the install going, let them use it for a while, ordered a brand new one, exactly the specs as they were asking for. And basically, after we got the whole situation resolved by installing the new one, apologized again, identified where the problem fell within the organization, and told them that it was more or less fixed. So after everything, the customer says, all right, thank you, I'm happy, fine, good, bye. Again, good customer service requires more or less a follow-up, an extra follow-up on top of that. So I wanted to call back. I called back, actually, I think it's in the very next week, checking to see how things were, offered to come by, check, give them a full-on tutorial of their chemicals, all that, the whole spectrum. But I basically said, I just want to apologize on behalf of the company again that this occurred. I know this is a major heartache. Again, you're showing that empathy. And also that, and I did tell them, I was very upfront and honest, as Chris had mentioned, and actually said, I identified where the breakdown was, and I have installed procedures and processes to prevent this from ever happening again. And I just want you to know that, again, we are very sorry, and we hope that you continue doing business with us, because we made a lot of money on that repeat business, the chemicals, the parts, anything that our company could provide. That's where we made a lot of money. We did not want that customer to go somewhere else and speak ill of the company I work for. So that extra follow-up and really making them understand that, wow, this is a bad situation, they happen, but they understood, they heard, and they fixed it, and they're cool. They're good. They're a good company.
Perfect. And again, the big idea here is I love this idea of showing them or sharing with them, like, look, we made a change. This was not just a thing where we blew it off or like, oh, we screwed up on that one.
Mhm.
We literally changed the way our company does business because of what happened to you, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else. That shows them that it's that next level of, I care about your experience and I want to make it better, and I want to, it's like, so you've made a change, you've helped us change for the better in a sense, and we appreciate that sort of
It
thing.
goes miles. It truly goes miles.
All right, and so then we've come from the idea of trying to plan ahead of time and training our staff and empowering them, and we've gone through the process of letting them vent, listening, trying to get that detective part going. What's wrong? What happened? Fixing it, and then this next high level step of following up. And so to close the loop in this process, and that's kind of what this really is like just like we would use a decision making loop in flying, a loop in this customer service recovery process. The last bit I have here is, periodically you should go back and evaluate and make changes so these things don't happen again. And I know, Charles, you had mentioned specifically when you were managing the team, I assume it was at the hot tub place, that you would do a process similar to this. Can you want to tell us a little bit about how that worked and what you did?
Yeah, no, this is a very very crucial part in prevention. And so what we would do, and we didn't like hierarchy, right, in our company. We felt it was a small startup company. I started there 4 months after they started, and so we were so reliant on every single sale, and to make the company successful. Again, everybody's a team. We're all working together for the same goal. What we would do is we would actually get together in a circle, stand together on a circle in the middle of the sales floor, and actually talk about the issues, talk about the customer comments, questions, positive ones as well as the negative, but primarily focus on the negative because those are the ones we didn't want to have occur again. And what I would do as a sales leader, I would actually write down all these different scenarios that occurred. And again, kind of like I was mentioning before, you kind of columnize it out, say what was the scenario, what was the catalyst that actually started this whole thing, what was the resolution and the customer experience, what was the end result, and then you kind of are able to, with it logged, you're able to trend it out. Now again, utilizing your team, because they are the boots on the ground, they are a phenomenal resource. Because they're the ones dealing with the customers, they're the ones hearing it from them most of the time, and they're going to be a very clear insight as, hey, here's this one didn't really go to DEFCON 5, but this is one that easily could potentially go there. And again, round circle, no judgment. There's not like I'm going to reprimand you for none of that. It is, I want full transparency, and again, to help the greater goal of making the company successful.
You mentioned in managing that too. You said sometimes there will be people in that group as you're trying to do that might snicker or do whatever. How did you handle that as a manager?
I pointed at him and looked at him kind of funny and just said, one more time. That's not that, it's we basically don't allow that, right? It's the whole purpose of getting together in a circle is there's no judgment. There is, like, if you have something constructive to actually add to that situation or conversation, do so, please. I want transparency. I want everybody to talk, and I will not get upset. The owner, who is also a part of that circle, would not get upset. He was one of the biggest vocal people of everybody is equal. There's no judgment, period. And so I was actually we all screw up on things. There's things I screwed up on, and I raised my hand and say, I did this, and I think this is how I could have prevented it, right? And it's that understanding that there is no judgment that is going to allow people to be more vocal in their comments in that.
And from what you told me before, it almost sounds like you guys built a culture too to make sure that people knew that it was not okay to call out somebody else. It was more about, we're trying to identify problems and help each other be better, so that as a team we survive.
Right. It is there. We're all there together as a team, basically, is the overarching goal. So, and then we would do that on a regular basis. Sometimes if we saw a trend, again, you're documenting all this stuff, and from a leadership aspect, you actually looked at that, and every single every time something occurred, all your expenditures that was a result of trying to resolve the situations. But then every quarter, we would guarantee everybody get together and we'd hold that roundtable session. Sometimes because based on the trending and how things started going in a bad direction for a month or two, we would have them more frequently. Every month we would have those. But again, it's really just trying to keep a handle, keep an understanding, and knowing the details of your business from the customer experience side. And I say that word very sternly because it is all, customers are only going to come to you if they have a good experience, right? And at AOPA, we have the member experience, right? Customers or members, people don't want to be a member of AOPA if there's a bad experience. And our focus here is to make a great experience. And same thing with every business I was in. You got to make a great experience. Let those people want to come to you, you know.
Cool. So again, it's that document, analyze it, and then identify trends and then do something to fix those.
And act on it, right? And you can't just do all the stuff without the action at the end. It's that action is the cherry on top.
You know, to go back to your original message about being proactive, you can do something very much like what you're talking about, Charles, when you know you're going to make a change that's going to upset some people.
Mhm.
So you can see that coming in your business.
Yep.
Don't wait for it to happen because you know it's coming, right? So if you're getting rid of a favorite airplane, if one of your CFIs that people love is leaving, if you're introducing new software, if you're introducing new billing requirements or scheduling rules, those things are going to upset someone. Go ahead and get your staff together early ahead of that and talk about what's likely to happen and how they can deal with it before it occurs.
Yep. Create that recovery effort beforehand.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, then depending on the size of your staff too, then you also have your consistent messaging. So they're not getting different responses each time they come and deal with someone else.
Yep.
And that to Charlie's about making the lists and kind of keeping track of things that go wrong and hearing from your people that work for you and work with you.
Right.
Is over time you might find there's a trend. Whereas if you were individually keeping track of things, you wouldn't always hear all things that were issues that were coming up. So if everyone's providing the data, like, okay, we're seeing this more often than other things, what's going on?
Yep. And here's the other factor too, small business wise, and I can't stress this enough, it is so important to be transparent with your team in as far as the what you're finding in those quarterly reviews of, you know, your trends. You know, it's to say this again, we are all here together to make this company successful. Here's the situations that occurred. Here's all the things that as a company we're dealing with. And then look, we had a phenomenal month. You know, we had 0 issues. We had 0 issues for 3 months straight. This is great. You know, again, or if on the flip side, if you had a lot of negative situations, relay those as well. But again, these are the people that are helping you make your business successful. So, you know, transparency is essential.
Perfect. All right. So I think this is some great advice here. And I'm hoping, and again, we will share. And Stephen, I think, actually, I'll see if I can find it. Can you maybe share the handout in the chat? Do you have that off of the thing? And if not, I will get that out.
It's in the files, but I can drop it in the chat as well.
All right, perfect. So it's in the files here for the webinar itself, but maybe we'll drop it in the chat just in case people aren't able to see that. So actually what I wanted to do was just jump ahead. We had some axioms there. Actually, we'll just review this really quickly. So the axioms here, I found this in one of the articles and I thought this is interesting. We can look at it later, but the basic things, these are some key parts of what we've already talked about. And I found this was actually in an article. It was almost a study that was done by an organization that does things for hospitals and medical care facilities and how to provide good customer service there. And so they said, you know, number one to think about, all customers have basic expectations. You can see the things there, like they expect you to be reliable, to assure them, to provide tangibles, to be empathetic and responsive. The second one being that, and I think you've seen that now, it's not only a physical thing, like I'm going to fix the problem that happened, but it's also a psychological process of letting them vent and helping them, you know, understand and feel like you're there to help them. To work in a spirit of partnership, both with your employees and the customers, work together to solve the problem. Customers react more strongly to fairness mistakes rather than honest mistakes. And what they meant by that one was, and it's something Elizabeth mentioned early on, that people will come and they're upset. If it's an honest mistake, like, oops, I forgot to do that, they're usually not as upset about that. They can see that there was nothing necessarily that you did to them. It's just we're human. But the fairness mistake is where they feel like you treated them differently than you treat everybody else. And they can be very upset about that, or they're perceiving it as a fairness mistake. And that's one you've got to work on and be ready for, to let them vent. And again, do what you can to solve that. And then finally, as I think we've really hit on a lot, axiom 5 there, which is effective recovery is a planned process. It's not something you just do off the top of the cuff. You really want to be prepared ahead of time and think about that. So I thought those were interesting points there. But what I wanted to do, go ahead, Steve, Charles.
On that recovery process itself at Axiom 5, one of the things that I've learned from my errors as manager is training the staff, number one, on the process, and making sure that there's residual training on a regular basis of that process. Because you can say it once, but that doesn't make it a habit, right? So that repetition makes habit. So you really got to make sure that they are understanding of that recovery process in order to make a success out of it. So that recurring training is essential.
Perfect. And I completely agree. Now, as sort of the last bit here, we've got about 10 minutes at our normally scheduled time, so we want to be cognizant of your time. But one of the thoughts that we had, and by the way, let me just go ahead to this one just to show you, and then I'll come back. These are the resources. I have the links to the 3 articles as we were researching that I thought were really useful. So I put those there in the handout there that Stephen shared in the chat, also in the files for this meeting. So just be aware that those are there. And I thought that you might find something useful, especially that last one, that strategy 6P was the one I was talking about for the healthcare industry. So we already had somebody mention an example. Lonnie told us here in the chat of we have just successfully helped a rusty pilot come back after a 50-year hiatus due to some very inappropriate CFI actions. I'm assuming maybe in a different school or somewhere else. And the reason that they were able to do it was because they had a listening session with that client, possible client, with a pre-scheduled meet and greet with all of our staff and sat down and listened to them. And then they were able to get this person to become a customer and then get them to be unrusty. So which is amazing. That's really awesome. And you almost be curious to hear more about that. So what we wanted to do is just for the sort of thought for discussion, feel free to throw things in the chat, or if you'd like to speak or ask a question, just hit there's a little icon that's got like a little smiley face with a hand. Just raise your hand and then we can turn your mic on for you, or turn it so you can turn yours on if you like. And so we've got the basic steps here: this anticipate, understand, the empowering your team, acknowledge, apologize. You can see the 7 steps there, and then just some of the scenarios. So we were kind of curious to know how you might handle one of these, or if you had questions about it that we might be able to answer or give you ideas. So feel free. So I don't know, Lonnie, would you be willing to share what you guys did with that one? If so, just raise your hand and we'll be glad to let you share. So we'll see if he's able to do that. Okay, and we're just going to hang on for that one. We'll see. So just raise your hand, Lonnie, if you see that, hit that icon so we know. In the meantime, though, if anybody else has a question, throw it in the chat. And then maybe we take one of these and just kind of work through it. So let's say that we had a scheduling error that would happen. What would you guys think of the staff that we've got here, our guests? What would be some ways we could try to work through the process, like anticipating and understanding customer needs? How would you try to do that with scheduling, potentially scheduling errors? Any thoughts there?
Personally, I'd probably, if I was faced with that particular situation, I would, obviously, number one, apologize, because then you end up having the, that understanding that this person may have driven 45 minutes to an hour to your flight school, and there's a time investment from them, but understand, apologize, and depending on the level of anger that they're at, obviously react accordingly. But honestly, if there's a scheduling issue, they're not able to attend. To me personally, that's an automatic. Your next lesson is on us. It's a scheduling error on our part. We own it. Now we will resolve it on our expense. And again, that is incentive to not have that occur again, because now you have just incurred an expense that could have otherwise been avoided.
And go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was just going to say, from a structural point of view, a lot of the scheduling issues you see at flight schools are a lesson ran long, and so now the plane isn't ready, and now I'm waiting, and I don't have time, and now I'm not going to get my full lesson time because I have somewhere else to be, that kind of thing. And in a case like that, where you see that that's a potential, that can be structurally addressed by the way you schedule your lessons, leaving a 15-minute break, making sure your flight instructors know it's critically important that they be back on time, whatever that looks like for your school. But that's the kind of thing you may also be able to proactively address ahead of having a customer service failure.
Perfect. I know that one of the things that, and then that's the idea of anticipating, and 2 things come to my mind just from my own experience instructing and working in schools, is one is looking over the schedule, obviously, as the day begins and seeing if there's a potential issue. Is a plane going to go down for maintenance? What's the weather looking like? And I can remember the good schools that I had gone at or worked at, they would call customers that like right away in the morning. Like, we've got a problem, just wanted to let you know, and we're going to give you an option, but for not waiting till lesson time for that to happen. So they had a process in place to look ahead of the day and say, what can we do to prevent this from happening? And be on top of that. So if they know that an airplane might go down, they might give a warning and just say, hey, we've got other things. And Jamie, you are reading my mind, because that was the other point I was going to make. You're on top of it. Is the idea of 3 hours, and so that way you make sure that you've got time for the briefings on the front and back end of the lessons. The school that I worked in and did all my instruction at, that's exactly what we did. We would block 3 hours instead of the normal 2-hour time. We would do a 3-hour block just for that purpose, and so that way we weren't rushed. We had time, and we had enough time in there so the student can get the lesson. We could work with them, and then we weren't rushing. And in fact, we even found my chief CFI, Jim Pittman, at the time. He did a bunch of analysis, and he figured out that going for a longer lesson, shooting more for, like, a lot of people might fly a 1.2 or 1.3. He found that going for not right at the beginning, but as people are getting used to flying, doing a 2-hour lesson was more efficient, because you're wasting less time on taxi, and you're getting out and getting more stuff done. And he actually found that was a better way to do it. So that's why he made us institute these 3-hour blocks. So it not only was the part about having that buffer, but he found it was more efficient for training. So exactly. So just that analysis and thinking and anticipating how can I best help the customer, doing that is really, really helpful.
And that is something that would clearly come out of a discovery session with your team too, as a situation that occurred. You can say, all right, how do we prevent this from occurring in the future? Again, creating that buffer would be that solution.
And go ahead. Oh, no. So the other part I was thinking about too is it's like part of the empowering the team on that too, is maybe giving them the ability of thinking ahead, like, what can we offer in case this does happen? And maybe it's like, we've got sims available, or we've already got sort of ideas for what to do for ground sessions, or just think through what are the things we could offer in the case this were to happen, so we're not wasting that customer's time. Because I can't tell you, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I know for me, I've seen it where it's like the person comes in, well, the airplane's unavailable. Well, let's just do some ground, and there's nothing planned, right? It's sort of just like, what are we going to do? And it's sort of off the cuff, rather than saying, we've got a plan. So if this happens, we've got ground already planned, or something we can do that will be productive, and it's not just sort of making something up on the spot, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
because that makes customers feel like they have been cheated twice. Right? Because now they're doing something that is maybe not the best use of their time. You're going to charge them money for it, and they didn't get to do what they were expecting. So not really a win.
Exactly. All right. Well, I know that we are coming to the end of our hour here. So if you have any other questions, throw them in the chat there. But I think we'll sort of start to wrap things up. One thing I wanted to just throw out there as well, I'm going to jump to this slide, is please let us know if you've got topics that you would really like us to cover, something that's of interest to you that you might find useful. Please let us know. You can shoot us just in the chat here. You can let us know, or shoot us an email at ftinitiative@aopa.org. I know this month we were trying out, and we're working on growing our audience for the Flight School Connector. So you can let us know. We tried out the webinar software today for Teams, and we're just kind of messing with that. So please let us know if you have any feedback for us, or any suggestions. We would love to hear from you. And otherwise, I want to very much thank Charles for being here with us. We really appreciate your expertise. Hopefully you won't have to talk to Charles if you call AOPA, because that means that something may have gotten escalated. But if you have questions for him,
we love good things. We love good things too.
Yes. Yes. If you're just looking for some advice, I'm sure Charles will be willing to chat with you, but hopefully not in a way that we're escalating anything that happens.
It's always okay to just call Charles and say thanks too.
You know what? Stephen knows how I like. Yeah. That's how I work.
And Elizabeth, thank you again for joining us. We always appreciate you having here and your perspective. And Stephen, we appreciate the Ritz camera stuff, because I know that it was bringing back some old memories. You were digging out some of the battle scars, as it were. Yes.
He's going to need a therapy session here
Feels like
after
a
this.
whole lifetime ago, but boy, it comes back quick.
So again, check out the slides. We have it there in the chat. I know it's available in the files, and we will have this posted up in the next few days on YouTube. So check it out if you know of anybody that might take some interest in this. And otherwise, I want to thank you all for being here, and we look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.